Hello and welcome back to the Daily Pilgrim channel. Well, this is my new base of operations because I'm going to be doing a new podcast and I've got an audiobook contract to read an audiobook, so I'm very excited about that. But this is part 3 of the Nostalgic podcast, so I do hope you enjoy it. It's the final part of the little mini 3-part series that really founded the podcast in the very beginning. It does witter on after that. I make minor apology, and I'm suffering with a bit of a cold, so sorry if my voice isn't normal as it would be. This is the bedroom I never use, because Noah and I sleep downstairs having father-son adventures, so loads of junk up there. That's my camera jib. That was from the video, the secret bit of, or unboxing the secret bit of kit, which wasn't secret because I told everyone about it. And I've never used it. It was the most expensive tripod that I never used. So, yes, part 3 of the podcast. Do hope you enjoy, but remember, it was 18 months ago. It's how I was feeling at the time. It's for nostalgia, but here it is.
Hello and welcome once again to the Daily Pilgrim podcast, and I'm your host Alex. Just like to say thank you very much indeed for joining, and I hope you enjoy the show. This week we're not coming to you from a field somewhere in Wales, but we're also not coming to you from the cupboard under the stairs. I am delighted to say, well, sort of anyway, that I've relocated. I am now sat in the window of the conservatory overlooking the garden. And there are certain good and bad bits to this. But first, I'd just like to explain why I decided to move from the cupboard under the stairs, albeit maybe temporarily. Now, the thing about building a sound booth is that you want to try and make it as insulated as possible. You want to make sure that, well, no noise can get in or out. If you build it particularly well, you'll pay attention to door seals so that when the door is closed, there's a nice, soft buffer, if you like, insulating every last crack. Unfortunately, if you do this, and you do it well, and I like to do things well, you also cut off your own air supply. That's right, 10 to 15 minutes sat in the little cupboard under the stairs, not only do you start to become incredibly claustrophobic, but you stop breathing. Now, I designed the room to be reverberation-free, and so well did I do it that after 10 to 15 minutes, there is not a noise to be heard, because you have passed out. So, I have relocated to the desk in the conservatory overlooking the garden, and there are good and bad points to this. The good point is that there is so much natural light, and oxygen, let's not forget that. But there are other things that are present too. The daegu, all 3 of them, in the cage about 1.5 meters from where I'm sat, do on occasion decide to go for a little run in their wheel. And things like the electricity coming on and off, or should I say the central heating coming on and off, and all the electrical noises, whether that's the washing machine or dishwasher, all of these things do somewhat get in the way of a podcast. But I've decided to adapt, adopt, and improve, and we're simply going to punch through it. Now, today's Friday, and last Sunday was my birthday. My birthday is always a bit of a mixed bag. Sunday the 20th of June, yes, I share my birthday most years with Father's Day. Just so happens that's how it falls. Now, the real thing about my birthday is that there's a sort of a mix of happiness, the fact that people love me and care about me and want to give me presents and nice things. But there's also the fact that I'm a year older. And it's not this that upsets me. It's the fact that I'm very harsh on myself when it comes to motivation and achievement. I always look at what I've achieved in the last year, and it doesn't matter what it is, it's never good enough. And I'm always super self-critical. This year, for example, I've set up 2 rather successful enterprises and also finally got my YouTube channel and podcast off the ground. Is this good enough? Of course not. I have incredibly high standards, and no matter what I set for myself, I will never ever achieve them. But motivation is a very, very important thing, and that's the serious bit of today's podcast. When I made the famous promise, whatever it is, because I've still kept it close to my chest, 2.5 years ago with Noah, the promise was to, well, very roughly, change my circumstances, change my stars, if you like, go out and repair my life, recreate the new me. Now, there was something that we promised that I will never ever tell. Well, I say never, not until next year. My 45th birthday, Noah and I have a goal to have achieved by. If I don't make it, I'll be honest and I'll say what it was. But hopefully, I will be able to say, wow, what a fantastic thing we've done, and wasn't it worth the wait? Well, for you listening, probably not, because you've no idea what it is, and I'm afraid it must remain a deep, dark secret until then. That having been said, motivation is a very, very important thing, and there's several things that I do to motivate myself on a daily basis. I bought myself a keyring. Now, most people, when they buy themselves a keyring, might look on Amazon or eBay or even down at the local shop and buy something for £5. My keyring was ever so slightly more expensive, and I'm not saying that to show off, but I wanted a very particular one. It was only £100, and yes, it's worth more than probably my vehicle that is currently it's attached to. However, the point is, every time I look at this keyring, it's a huge motivational tool for me, along with my watches. Now, I do like a nice watch. Sadly, I also like to buy the nice watches. The best one was given to me as a present, and that will forever be the most important one. But I've got rather a taste for Luminox watches. Now, these are Swiss-made with an ever-glowing, ever-visible special crystal fitted onto the watch hands and the various bits. What do you call them? The bits as you go round the dial, the numbers, that's it, yes. So they are rather nice. They're not the most expensive in the world, but I probably shouldn't have 5 of them. I say that because I do technically have 6, because I have another one that's in a box that I haven't opened. And it was a limited edition, so it's staying there. Now, I mentioned the enterprises, and I mentioned the YouTube channel and podcast. I've been trying to get off the ground this YouTube channel and podcast. I've been trying to get it off the ground for 6 years. And each time I went out to do video footage or I recorded something, it was never good enough. And I think the quest for perfection does lead you to a little bit of failure along the way, because when you want something to finish perfect first time, it's probably not going to do that, is it? Somebody said to me a while ago, there comes a time that you have to walk upon the water. And I suppose there is a truth to that. You really have to take your faith, whatever it's in, and basically take life by the horns, or dangly bits, depending on what you're thinking. And you have to go for it. And maybe it'll fall short, and maybe it won't. But maybe having those little motivational tools can drive you a little tiny bit closer, I think anyway, towards some sort of success, even if it's small milestones at a time. Because that's often the thing. When you set yourself your one and only goal as, becoming king of the world, there is a chance that there's lots of little steps you'd need to take along the way, and unless you reach those milestones, it's unlikely you might ever become king of the world. That having been said, I'm not aiming to be king of the world. Not all of it, anyway. I am delighted, however, on a very serious note, that 2 rather wonderful trips came off to fruition very nicely, and I got some video footage from them. The first one is live now on YouTube. It's the video of Noah and I going to Swanage. We had a fantastic time. Father and son, I won't say pitted against the universe, just father and son in a camper van, pottering around, sharing some lovely memories. It was a wonderful, wonderful trip. And yes, there were a few false starts with some of the footage we took, but it was a wonderful, wonderful trip. And when I watched it, even though I'd created the video, I cried a little bit. Or I cried a lot. Maybe I did a good job. You may or may not think so. Or maybe I was just really, really taken back with the wonderful memories that we'd had and thought, wasn't that lovely? It did bring a tear to my eye. Now, from tears of joy from the Swanage trip come just pure tears from the Wales trip. I will say I had a lovely time, and the second podcast does mention some of the amusing things that happened to me whilst there. That having been said, what I didn't mention on the previous podcast was after spending quite a lot of time creating video footage, one particular bit stood out in the middle of nowhere and taking some wonderful, wonderful footage with some wonderful, I thought, audio, some inspirational speeches that I gave, only to realise that upon checking the footage, the microphone hadn't worked. And there was some beautiful silence. In fact, some people might say it was the best thing I'd ever said, whatever it was. So the Wales trip had its challenges. However, I got lots of footage, and that is my next project, to try and sift through goodness knows how many video files. But I'll do it. Now, another project that I'm involved with at the moment, and will hopefully be coming very soon, is Barbary Castle. Now, Barbary Castle, for those of you that don't know, is an old hill fort. It's not there anymore, obviously, it's just a mound. And it's just outside Swindon in a place called Wroughton. When I was staying in South Cerney for just over a year, I used to go down to Barbary Castle often. I was trying to do my own version, my own recreation, if you like, of a video that somebody had done on YouTube, a chap called Rick, as it happens, and he had created this video about living a simple life there. And I found this a real inspiration. So when I went down to Barbary Castle, I tried to recreate my own version of this video. And I then realised there was a problem. My life is anything but simple. It's very, very complicated, and yes, enterprises having been got off the ground in the last year or so, the truth is I don't have a simple life. What I do have, however, is a life that is the best version of my life that I can possibly lead. And so I thought maybe I should do my own version of that. When I used to go down time after time, and I used to go down, I would say, once a week at least, the time after time that I went down there, I tried in vain to create something. However, with a new, fresh set of eyes and fresh mind, I'm going to be going down again, and I bought a book. It's about walking the Ridgeway. Now, I can't guarantee that I'll walk all of the Ridgeway, but what I would like to do is go to the various points along it, the places of interest, and do some sort of video or podcast or both on that. A little bit of a walk, if you like. Now, before I do that, I should explain that there was something else about Wales that was quite amusing. Well, I hope you'll find it amusing. I found it deeply frightening. I need to give a little bit of an introduction to this, though. You see, when I rented an office very recently, bear with me, when I rented an office very recently for a failed project attempt, I spent £1,000 on 2 months' usage of an office. I only actually used the office space itself for 2 half-an-hour slots of time. That's 1 hour for £1,000. In case I haven't spelled this out, that's £1,000 an hour. The most expensive meeting room rate anywhere. Even Dubai has got to be cheaper than that. That having been said, that almost seemed a breeze compared to what happened to me just the other day. You see, I had my very first flight of my drone. I'd bought the drone about 5 months ago, and it's lived in the filing cabinet ever since. I decided, however, that going away to Wales, I was going to take it with me. And the £1,000 drone, and I do need to keep going on about that, that's very important. £1,000 drone, set up, connected to the phone, and I was just about to take off when a phone call came through. Now, it was somebody offering me some work. I was delighted to take the call. I had a little chat, and there was much amusement about how easy or difficult it is to fly a drone. And then, when I cut the call, it was time for the off. I launched the drone, and it was only when the drone was high into the sky and visual contact was becoming a slight challenge that I glanced down at the screen. Because you see, you plug your mobile phone into the drone controller, and that becomes your display screen. It shows you what the drone can see, thus enabling you to be able to navigate it properly. except the phone call coming in had done something and frozen the program, and I couldn't see what the drone could. No problem, I thought. I'll just bring it back down to ground, sort out the problem, and then deal with it. Because I was very conscious that where the batteries hadn't been used, I think there was only half charge in them. They had been charged fully, but I think they'd lost half the charge. So I worked out I had about 8 minutes or so of flight time when I started. 2 minutes and 6 seconds into the flight, I suddenly realised with a paralysing fear that actually I couldn't control the drone or see it. So I couldn't really bring the drone straight down because it was on the side of a mountain, which is about 45 degrees in angle. So I couldn't just bring it down and lose it in the foliage, that would be daft. I needed to bring it over me first. So I wasn't sure which way it was facing. So I pushed the flight stick away from me and the drone moved in whatever direction it moved. And it was away from me. Okay, I thought, that's no problem. I was pushing it forward and it was going away from me. I'll pull it back. That'll bring it. No, it didn't. It moved it further away again. So, try left. It's going further over the mountain. I'm finally right. I'd love to say it brought it back, but it didn't. The drone was getting out of my visual field and I couldn't control it. I know, I thought. It's got an emergency return to home button. I'll press that. And after pressing it 4 times, it hadn't come back to home. I was a little, if I'm honest, disillusioned with the drone controller, particularly this fantastic return to home feature that I had paid an additional £650 for, the grade of drone that I bought, because it had this wonderful function. However, that having been said, well, there's nothing really much you can do about it other than try and run up the mountain and stand under wherever it is, through the foliage. And I did. In fact, I've never run so fast in my entire life, which was amusing because I was quite literally defecating myself, well, all right, no, metaphorically defecating myself, as I ran up the mountain. My heart was pounding, I really felt like I was losing control of all my bodily functions, and I still couldn't see the blasted drone. Then eventually, the return to home button did work. Didn't return it to home, but it did take it over where I was. So I could at least bring the drone straight down, work out which direction it was facing, and at least get some measure of control to land it safely and properly. And this, I was delighted I was able to do. But 2 minutes and 6 seconds for £1,000, I've no idea if you work that out on an hourly rate what that would be, but that all of a sudden makes that meeting room, that office that I rented, look like a really, really cheap deal. While I was away, I nearly got stung by hornets. An amusing video will be going up on YouTube very shortly, where I pick the camera up and run like the clappers. There was also another time when I was stood on the mountainside, did a lovely bit to camera, and then a wasp attacked me, and there was a moment. Yeah, I still haven't recovered from that. All in all, the Wales trip was fantastic. It was brilliant, and it was everything that I needed it and wanted it to be. I won't pretend for a moment I got the video footage I was after, but I did get something else. I got a real sense that trips like that, well, maybe they don't need to have any exact words to describe them. Maybe the actual going in itself, maybe that's enough. And I think that pretty much sums up what the Daily Pilgrim podcast is all about as well. Let's face it, I don't exactly have an exact offering, so to speak. I literally make it up as I go along, because funny things do happen to me each day, and more particularly, they really, really do happen to me. So, as we come to the end of this podcast, I'd just like to thank you once again for joining. Now, I won't be coming to you from the conservatory again, I don't think, because although it has light and oxygen, I've had to restart so many times. The editing process is not going to be fun, and if the Daegu start running in their wheel just as I'm on this bit, because I can't cut it out with the music, I'm going to be rather cross. So instead, as they're being quiet, I will say thank you very much indeed for coming once again. Do please go to dailypilgrim.com and check out everything there. And more importantly, a pleasant week to you all. See you next week, and goodbye.